Welcome to the show. A lot of people are having a really hard time right now. And that's why I wanted to invite Dr. Nzinga Harrison. She's the co-founder of Eleanor Health onto the show. I just wanted someone who knows what the heck they're talking about to give all of us practical strategies for getting through this. The tough time that we are in is hitting different people differently. Some people are struggling for basic necessities. Some people are doing just fine with the basic necessities, but they're having a really hard time emotionally. Mental health issues are as important as any other. And right now, the anxiety and tension and uncertainty that so many people are living with is something with which I think that, we could all use. It's something about which all of us could use a little advice and frankly, some strategies for how to get through this as best we can. Here I am with Dr. Nzinga Harrison, co-founder of Eleanor Health. Please welcome to the program, Dr. Nzinga Harrison. She is the founder and chief medical officer at Eleanor Health. She's also the founder of Physicians for Criminal Justice Reform. She is an addiction specialist. And there's a lot to talk to Dr. Harrison about with right now. So thank you for being here, Doctor. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I do have to give my co-founder shine. So I'm co-founder of Eleanor Health and co-founder of Physicians for Criminal Justice Reform, reflecting that it takes a village.
Thank you for doing that. And actually, that's a good segue to part of what I want to talk to you about right now, which is isolation. I think it's important right now that you just gave a shout out to the people who helped you build the great projects, the businesses, the organizations that you founded, because it does take a village. Right now, a lot of people are isolated from their villages. I just saw a statistic that I have to tell you, Dr. Harrison, it broke my heart. It said that 25% of young people considered suicide last June. This is from the CDC. So how can we all better manage this growing bucket of anxiety that so many people are now having to live with?
Yeah, 1 in 4 young people. And I saw a similar statistic for old adults, not older adults, but that was 1 in 11 seriously considered suicide in the last month. And so we are all out here struggling. I think that's the first point, is like, we are all out here struggling. Part of what really, really feels devastating and unable to be overcome is when you feel like you're in it yourself. And then the stigma that we put around the concept of struggling, like you got to have it all together. You're a super mom, you're a strong Black woman, you're a powerful king. And it's like, we're humans, and unprecedented is the underscored word of the year. I've been talking about this concept of the syndemic, which is like, we already had the addiction epidemic. Then the COVID pandemic came and ripped all of our routines and our sense of security. And then racism is an epidemic that has been around clearly way longer than either you or I has been alive, but the acuteness of all of the just racial injustice in our face right now, all three on top of each other, means we have to accept that we're struggling. And we're not the only ones struggling, and create the acceptance for us to say that out loud and ask for help and support.
I think what you said about how we're all struggling is really an important thing to underscore, because that looks different for different people. There are a group of people in America right now, frankly, more than I think I've ever seen in my lifetime, who are struggling in a real material sense. They are not sure that they are still going to be housed when various eviction moratoria elapse. They are not sure that there's going to be food. So there's a real material struggle that's going on. There's also a psychological struggle. You know, you may have food in the refrigerator. You may not be on the verge of homelessness. Does that even right now come with a little bit of guilt so that people who are feeling sad and isolated, but, you know, not sick, not hungry, do you think that some of those folks are feeling less able or less willing to be open because, frankly, they're better off than a hell of a lot of other people right now?
Yeah, and I think that's a common like cultural dynamic we have, at least here in the United States, which is important, which is be grateful for what you have, and you have something more than another person has. Another person is struggling more than you. Both can be true, right? You can have more than another person has, and you can be grateful for what you have, and you can still be struggling. And still, so one of the ways our brains give us a sense of security and safety is through routine. And another way, just neurobiologically, routine creates a sense of safety and security. Physical touch creates a sense of safety and security. These are just like natural neurobiological mechanisms that we have. And so right now, all of our sense of security has been disrupted. We have a virus on the loose. We don't know when we're getting our routines back. We don't know when we get to see the people we love and hug them and, you know, give them a kiss without being afraid. And so, yes, we have more, thankfully, gratefully. That does not remove the fact that we still have serious lack of safety, emotional safety and psychological safety.
So how do we start, or how can we better manage that lack of safety? Because right along with these increased numbers who've considered suicide, there are also increased numbers of people who are abusing substances, increased substance use amongst young people and others. And, you know, there's a part, like if you spend a lot of time on social media, a lot of people are joking about it, right? You know, how like cocktail hours started much earlier in the day than it used to. People are looking for something to break up the day. They are looking for ways to relax. They are looking for ways to impart some sort of festivity and joy. Having a glass of wine is something that a lot of us do to do that. How can we make sure we're being careful that glass of wine to break up the boredom and anxiety of the day doesn't become a dangerous, harmful routine? What are the things people should look out for?
Yeah, so to put a statistic on that, alcohol sales went up 55% in the first 2 months of the pandemic.
Wait, and 55%.
Okay. And the same study that I alluded to earlier that said 1 in 11 people had seriously thought of suicide in the last month also said 1 in 4 people is binge drinking in the previous week. And so part of it is just knowing even what that is. Like you said, drinking to break up the day. So our day used to be broken up by a commute. It used to be broken up by maybe your kids' extracurricular activities. It used to be broken up. And now it's just sitting here. It used to be if you invited your work into your home, but now you're working from home and like your office is your bedroom and your kitchen and it's like always there. And so part of it is if you're drinking while you're working, this is a red flag.
Okay, so, just FYI, I'm not being light. It's just water. Okay, it's just water, not spiked, just water. Okay.
My cousin tagged me in a Facebook post that said, pro tip, if you blow on your mug of wine, people will think it's hot tea. Okay. So to your point about
Okay, but the notion here is I'm not trying to give people suggestions for hiding their alcohol consumption. But that's the thing. We're all like, people are drinking more. And
people
so like what, so like
more.
You said, we used to have a commute, right? We used to do all these things. Once upon a time, I was doing this podcast out in a studio somewhere else. And then I would call a friend on the way home. I would have said to my producer, try to like connect me with Dr. Harrison. Like maybe there's some way she and I can have a drink later on in a few weeks and like meet up at, 6 or a normal time for drinking. But now it's like I'm downstairs, I'm in my house, I'm talking to you in your house. Our worlds are smaller. So what's your advice? Like, because we really, we can joke about it, but there has become a reliance on alcohol and on substances that can be dangerous for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So the very tangible, concrete tool I like to give people is called the cage. And the first thing I say to people is, if you're asking the question, is this a problem? The answer is yes. And part of our difficulty in this country is that we don't consider it a problem until you get a DUI or until you get in trouble at work or until your spouse is about to leave your relationship, even though it became a mild problem way earlier on. And so we want to try to start identifying that as soon as possible. So if you're asking the question, the answer is yes, just get some support. Get a therapist, talk to somebody about it. Like, don't let the stigma stop you from getting help, because what it is a signal that you need something. It's a signal that your anxiety is too high, your depression is too high, your uncertainty is too high, your stress is too high, your sleep is not good. It's a signal. So just think of it like that. I'm not asking people to be like, I accept that I am an alcoholic. I'm not asking for that. C, this is the cage. C, have you ever thought to yourself, I might need to cut back, whatever it is? A, have you ever felt annoyed when somebody else mentioned it to you? Man, you sure look like you're drinking every time we get on this Zoom call. G, have you ever felt guilty? Like, I know I shouldn't be drinking right now, or I know I shouldn't be blazing up this right now, but I'm going to blaze it up. And then E is eye opener. So this scale was originally developed for alcohol. And it was like, do you wake up in withdrawal and needing to take a drink? But you can use it for other substances also. It's just like, do you wake up in the morning anticipating when you will be able to? Right?
Looking forward to it. Do you wake up saying,
woke up Friday morning, like, it's Friday at 4, look at my calendar, 4:30 p.m., I'm getting that drink. If you answer one out of those 4 questions, CAGE, cutback, annoyed, guilty, or eye opener, it is 77% chance that you meet diagnostic criteria for an alcohol use disorder. So even if you're in the 23% who don't, it's a signal that you're walking in that direction. So we should just there's so much stigma to say, I'm worried about my drinking, but if we could just say that and intervene as early as possible, we could save ourselves a lot of difficulty.
Well, and I think now when you talk about your CAGE criteria, and when you talk about the other triggers, are you sleeping not enough? Do you have anxiety? I mean, frankly, I'm just going to be candid. I don't know anyone who over the past, now it's almost been a year of this shutdown. I mean, we're on 10 months.
Right.
I don't know anyone who hasn't ticked one of those boxes. And unless you're someone who's already a teetotaler, I don't know anyone who hasn't said, whoa, like over the holidays, me and one of my close girlfriends, we were like, you know what? Let's make sure that when we're getting together for an outdoor event or having a Zoom happy hour, sometimes we can have tea. Because there is such a reliance on alcohol, I think, to just try to make you feel like something else is going on than what seems to be a really bleak circumstance. Let me ask you, do you drink at all socially, casually?
Yeah. Yes and yes.
how do you modulate? Like, have there ever been times when you're like, you know what, I know better than myself let's just say it's January 6th and you're watching the Capitol be overrun by a mob. And you are worried about, just to use a random example, just saying, let's just say you were watching a mob overrun the Capitol and you're like, wow, that mob looked like me and my kids. That mob would have been taken down a long time ago. Massacre. So you're watching and thinking all these things. You're like, you know what? Let me just have a sip and try to take it down. Does that ever happen to you? I'm not even saying specifically with, the January 6th situation, but do you find yourself in those moments?
Yeah. So my biology protects me against using alcohol in that way because like one drink and your girl is asleep. So it is not alcohol for me, but I will tell you what it is macaroni and cheese and dessert. So I'm not even kidding, Tanya. Last Friday after work, I went on Uber Eats, and there is a restaurant. I had never heard of it before, but I, usually like type in your restaurant name. I typed in dessert. And I found a restaurant that only sells fair food. It was called like Food from the Fair or something like that. And I ordered $80 and it was funnel cakes and ice cream sundae. And I can't even remember whatever other mess I ordered. And then I went to a different restaurant and I typed in macaroni and cheese and then I ordered macaroni and cheese. It's the same phenomenon. So the way a lot of people were using alcohol in those moments, what I use is carbohydrates and sugar. But it's the same thing, which is taking the edge off and just feeling like I put on Facebook, I have angst. I can't even put my finger on it, but I have angst and I just want to crawl in the bed and eat macaroni and cheese and dessert and just lay there. It's the same phenomenon as alcohol.
The same phenomenon. We all have, your point is that people have different crutches. For some people, it's food. For some people, it's alcohol. For others, it might be some other sort of substance, drugs or some other substance. But you raise a good point about how these different, given that we have these different crutches, there are different stigmas attached to these different crutches. So, which also, I think, speaks to the larger issue about how we stigmatize different addictions and how we stigmatize different communities who have different sorts of addictions. So no doubt, I think that ours is a society that can be hostile and unfriendly to people whose body types are larger than the norm.
Absolutely.
But we don't treat people who have an extra Twinkie the way we do people who have 2 extra martinis. And we don't treat people who have 2 extra martinis the way we treat people who maybe have a crack or meth addiction. For people who are struggling with one of those more stigmatized addictions, what's your recommendation for trying to get help? Because sometimes people are just embarrassed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really put your finger on it. That story I just told about ordering $80 worth of funnel cakes. Nobody will judge me for it because I'm thin. And I'm thin just because of biology, right? Like just DNA that my parents gave me. If I were morbidly obese, then people would have been disgusted by that story. And so very much to your point, the stigma falls differently. Stigma falls differently on Black people. Stigma falls differently on anybody that's falling outside of rich, white, cisgendered, heterosexual male, which is the most privileged identity in this country. And so my advice is find a place that will be safe. And so on the podcast In Recovery, this is our thesis. Every single one of us, yes, knows what it's like to have some behavior that we would be doing differently, but for some reason we can't. Every single one of us. And so the stigma of you're different because you developed an addiction is false. Every single one of us gets that. At Eleanor Health, we're like, we accept you for who you are. If you look at our reviews, the most common comment is like, I didn't feel judged, because we put so much judgment on substance use disorders. And so it is, when I tell people, go to healthinherhue.com, which connects Black women to healthcare providers, read the profile. You can read in that profile if you're going to be welcome, right? Go to psychologytoday.com, read the profile. You can read if that person says addiction is a choice, and if you can just make better choices, your life would be better. Don't go there. You can read if it says we all struggle at times, and if we have compassion and connection and people who can hold us up, I'll help guide you through those times so you can get stronger yourself. Go there. That's a safe place, right? So preferentially do the work. Everybody in your life is not safe. Everybody at work is not safe. Everybody in healthcare is not safe. Seek out a safe place and take the risk of asking for help.
You mentioned your podcast, In Recovery, and everybody, you should listen to Dr. Harrison's podcast, In Recovery. There is an episode that you did where you describe racism as an addiction. And in the intro to that episode, you talk about a lot of your identities. You're a Black woman, you're a wife to a Black man, you are the mother to Black children. And one of the things you said about your kids was that they're now at that age where they're no longer seen as cute, but they are seen as threatening. And one statistic that everybody should be aware of, I'm not making this up, is that Black children, African-American children, boys and girls, are typically seen as older than their white counterparts. Another thing I'd throw out is that I would think, and you alluded to this, I think Black people generally are seen as more psychologically unidimensional than other people. Black women are always strong. We're never sad. The anger is never about being uncertain, insecure, overwhelmed.
Right.
You know, other people get all of these other dimensions to their anger and their mood and their expression. We're just strong, angry, mad, this. How do you, so it's kind of a two-part question I have. How do you open up a conversation where, how do you make people more aware, I think, of the boxes that they're imposing on other people? Like when you talk about racism as an addiction, is there some part of that addiction that makes people more inclined to kind of deny Black folks their full humanity and the full panoply of emotional expression, if that makes sense to you?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And so when I talk about racism as an addiction, it's using the thesis of addiction that we use on the podcast, which is continuing to do something even though the negative consequences outweigh the benefits. So as humans, benefits reinforce our behaviors. If there's something that brings us no benefit, we're not going to do it again, right? Like we're just biologically wired like, oh, okay, well, that was useless. No need to spend time and energy doing that. What is important on the other side of that coin is addiction is continued behavior despite the negative consequences outweighing the benefits, but there are still benefits. And so in that racism episode, the question that I challenge America with, we see the negative consequences of racism. Black people are dying at 2.5 times the rates of COVID. Infant mortality and maternal mortality rates are 3 to 5 times in Black populations. Socioeconomic disparity, health disparities, educational disparities, criminal justice, overwhelmingly, we're the people in prison. Like you name it, the negative consequence, getting killed on TV by the police, and having our murders be like murder porn on the news, and the trauma that that brings us. The negative consequences are evident. And so the challenge is, what are the benefits? Who is benefiting? And I think for people who don't want to be benefiting from racism, but who are, it can be very difficult to look that in the eye. And so when you talk about the boxes that we get put in and the inability to experience us multidimensionally, some of that is the privilege of not having to. When you're in the majority group or in the privileged group, you don't have to understand what it's like, right? So I always talk about being tall and thin with a whole lot of hair, all of things which are coveted in this society, and able-bodied with all four, of my limbs. I don't know what it's like to have a prosthetic limb because I have the privilege of not having to know. I don't know what it's like to walk down the street and people are judging me for eating a cheeseburger because I'm overweight, because I have the privilege of not having to know that. I don't want to be part of the group that oppresses and marginalizes those people, but I have to be able to accept that I have that privilege. And I think for white folks and other non-Black people, that can be very difficult to say, even though I don't want this privilege, I have this privilege, and that's one of the benefits of racism. I was having a conversation the other day, and we stumbled on, I don't even know, we were supposed to be talking about investments, and somehow we were talking about racism. I think it was the day of the siege. And we stumbled on the greatest privilege is the benefit of the doubt.
Mm.
It's what we don't get. As Black women, we look angry because we don't have the benefit of the doubt that maybe we're hurt. That Black man looks like a criminal because we don't have the benefit of the doubt that maybe he's up to something else other than criminality. And so, I don't know, I'm rambling.
Not at all. You're not rambling at all. And I must underscore what you said, that the biggest privilege at all is the biggest privilege of all is the privilege of being given the benefit of the doubt. We have seen so much in this past year, locked up in our houses or on lockdown, I should say. Everybody's got a cell phone, so we've been able to see people, harassed for bird watching. We've been able to see people killed in the middle of the street. I mean, we've seen this. But what a lot of people sometimes forget is that these are not new stories. I mean,
right.
Trayvon Martin was only killed, that was just a few years ago. And it's funny how, when you consider his story, here was a kid minding his business, walking down the street, accosted and killed by somebody without a badge.
Yep.
So if I'm a young person, if I'm a young Black man, and I think a lot of this, there are different stereotypes and there's different baggage that people put on young Black women, but it's baggage. Just the idea that we spent so much time debating, well, what was Trayvon using? What was this? What was that? Whereas if you're not a Black person, the presumption is people don't get to get in your business.
That's right.
If you're a young Black kid, the presumption is, Joe Schmo down the street may be packing and he feels like he has the right, badge or not, to get in your business. That's a lot of anxiety. I'm not a mom. What do you say to your young children? Because, you want your sons to grow up owning the world, because that feeling like they can own the world, because that's how they do better. How can they manage that, having that kind of confidence when, again, some badgeless guy with a gun may take it upon himself to get in their business and put them on defense? We're not even talking about police officers now.
Right.
I mean, how do you manage that as a professional, as a Black woman, and as a mother? What's the story that you tell?
It's so hard. So my boys are 14 and 15 now. So to the comment you made earlier that young Black kids appear as scary adults earlier, that age that happens is 8. 8 years old. And it goes back to the benefit of the doubt. Trayvon Martin was a child. And if he had been a white child walking down that street, he would have been given the benefit of the doubt by that bad man. And so when I'm having that conversation with my kids, it's the same. One, I want to keep it real with them. I cannot raise my kids up in fear. This is part of the reason we live in a neighborhood that's 99% Black, so that, yes, they can walk to the lake without me having to worry about them, because the police officers in our area are overwhelmingly Black. the neighbors are Black. And so my kids can walk down the street in my neighborhood and get the benefit of the doubt. We just have to have a conversation real with them and say, like, you have to live your life, but these are the risks that are out there. So, and my friends, even though we live in a 99% majority Black area, my kids went to a school for elementary and middle school that was very diverse. There was no majority, Montessori school. And it really infused in them kind of like this sense of self and owning the world and conquering the world and being curious. But very early on, you have to have those conversations like, I know your friend can do this. You also can do this, run around the neighborhood and play cops and robbers with, toys that look like guns. But here's the increased level of danger that represents for you, purely because you're Black and a boy. And you don't want to, it feels like stealing your kids' innocence. And it feels like painting a scary world for them. But you really just have to do it in a way that says, and so we're going to continue to live our lives, but we're going to live our lives understanding this risk that exists to us.
So your kids had the great benefit that many children don't, when you mentioned their educational background and the schooling and the diverse environment to which they were exposed, which is going to allow for greater comfort as they move and traverse in the larger world. A lot of young Black kids aren't having that.
Right.
They don't get that experience. And what they need, what we all need to hear from you is, what's your advice to them? Because just like there are a bunch of folks who are willing to see you as a criminal, who are going to call the police on you before they ask you your name or how you're doing or do you need anything, stranded on the side of the road. If young Black kids grow up with that sensibility toward, white people generally, it's going to be harder to maneuver in the world. How do you what's your advice for learning how to strike a balance? Because at some point, if you look at a lot of the spaces in which, I'll just use myself as an example. A lot of the professional spaces in which I move are not Black spaces.
Sure.
So if you are coming from an environment where you are regularly on edge, and then as you move through life, you end up in one of these largely non-Black spaces, how can you better kind of reconcile all of these competing messages that you've been getting?
I don't have all the answers. It's such a difficult question. I think the first is that we really want to, for Black kids, especially for all of our kids, be from the very beginning as much as possible, letting them know that you're not in a box. Like, there is more. There is always more, always be looking for more. So like, my father is a Vietnam vet, and he was commander of the Black Panther militia when we were growing up in Indianapolis, Indiana. And he would say, there's always a way out. You just have to keep looking. And it's like the same, I was reading a Martin Luther King quote just now that says, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. If you can't crawl, just keep moving forward. Whatever you do, just keep moving forward. And the more we can instill that in our kids, no matter what environment they're growing up in, I think this is the biggest handcuffs that kids who are growing up without this message have. It's like, there's only one way to money. There's only one way to success. There's only one way. And a lot of times those ways are not even the ways. It's like, no, there is more than you could ever imagine. Keep looking. Take the risk, keep looking, take the risk, keep looking. When you move out of those majority Black spaces that you've grown up in and you find yourself in majority white spaces, you will feel out of place. You're not. People will try to make you feel out of place. You're not. You may have to surround yourself with people who can remind you there are more possibilities than you could ever see. Just keep looking. And that's what I've been trying to instill in my kids. It's like, if anybody ever tells you you're in a box, there's always a way out. Just keep looking.
And there are also examples, frankly, of people who have broken out of boxes, created new spaces. You yourself are one. I mean, I am talking to a Black woman who's a physician, who co-founded a practice, who started a podcast, where you've really been able to elevate your voice and your message, I think, to everyone's benefit. So before we go, people are in crisis, and a lot of people need help. They are lonely, and they just need help. They need routine. Can you give us just a few practical tips, like things that people can do while we are living in this period of uncertainty, just to try to help provide some order and balance to the day? How can we just help make ourselves feel better just a little bit, some of the time?
Yeah, definitely. So I always drop this into the magic formula, which is bio, psycho, social, cultural, political. So biologically, you have to make sure, like, don't follow the Dr. Harrison funnel cake and macaroni and cheese diet. Like, you have to be eating right. Your body needs it right now. When we are under stress, more than ever, we need to be eating and sleeping. Psychologically, get support. This is more than any of us can bear alone. So get professional support. Talk to your friends about it, yes, but get a therapist, drop into a support group, okay? So eleanorhealth.com, we have free online support groups, no commitment, just come get support. Like, you scored 1 out of 4 on that KJ, just drop in. We have specific groups for BIPOC folks. We have specific groups for LGBTQ plus folks. We have groups for people who are using, drinking, whatever, people who are not, people who are worried about their loved ones. Like, just go on the website, drop into a group, no commitments, get some support. Number 3, socially, culturally, politically. This is a time of opportunity because there's been this collective awakening to the experiences that we've been having, and there are a lot of people who want to help. So moderate the emotional valence of the news and content that you're taking in. Because you can take in all the fear, like all fear all day, all night. You're going to carry that into your sleep. You're not going to sleep. You're going to carry that into your day. You're going to be stressed out. Moderate. Find good content and supplement the fear. And then finally, go outside every single day. Go outside every single day. We biologically need outside.
Be outside, get sleep, eat better. We are all going to get through this. Dr. Nzinga Harrison, Eleanor Health, we are going to put the link up. The link is up so people can use you as a resource. Just by the way, side note, what my macaroni and cheese is like old black and white movies or TV shows, but like none with like any racist elements, like none of that. But like, just Perry Mason late at night, Alfred Hitchcock late at night, like something where I feel but something where I know what's going to happen at the end, and like the good guys are going to win. Certainty. Like, good guys win, good people win, bad people lose. Like, that's what I'm looking for right now. Dr. Harrison, you're such a treat. Really, thank you for being here. Thank you for the resource you are. Thank you for your voice. Eleanor Health and host of In Recovery podcast. Everybody listen to Dr. Harrison. We really need your voice right now as much as we ever have. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.